Before you scroll, before you blink, imagine a room so silent you can hear hearts pounding. Imagine a voice about to rise that will change everything. Stay with me till the very end, because this is not just a performance, it's a moment that shook the world. And if stories like this move you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, because moments like these deserve to be shared. The theater lights dimmed, and the familiar buzz of the live audience faded into a nervous hush. Cameras rolled. Simon Cowell leaned back in his chair with that look everyone knew too well, the look that said he'd seen it all before. Hundreds of auditions, thousands of singers, countless Elvis impersonators who tried and failed to capture even a fraction of the magic. When the contestant walked onto the stage, no one expected anything different. He wasn't flashy. No dramatic entrance. Just a slim man in a worn jacket, hands shaking slightly, eyes scanning the judges like he was searching for permission just to exist there. His name was Daniel Brooks. 32 years old. From a small town no one in the audience had heard of. When asked why he chose an Elvis song, a few people laughed softly. Even Simon raised an eyebrow. Daniel swallowed hard and said he grew up listening to Elvis on an old radio with his mother. She worked 2 jobs, and that radio was the only thing that kept her smiling at night. Elvis wasn't just music to him, it was survival. It was hope. The crowd shifted. The laughter faded. Simon asked the question that everyone was thinking. Do you really think you can sing Elvis, better than Elvis? Daniel hesitated, then shook his head. No, sir. I don't think I can be him. I just want to sing the way the song feels inside me. That answer earned a polite nod, nothing more. The judges weren't convinced. Neither was the audience. The music began his slow, stripped down, just a few haunting notes. Daniel closed his eyes. And then he sang. The first line didn't shout. It didn't try to impress. It whispered. And somehow, that whisper sliced through the room. His voice carried a rawness that made people lean forward without realizing it. By the second line, something shifted. The air felt heavier. The audience stopped breathing. Simon leaned forward, his smirk gone. This wasn't an imitation. This wasn't karaoke. This was pain, love, loss, and longing wrapped into a voice that sounded like it had lived 1,000 lives. Daniel's mind flashed back to nights in that tiny kitchen, his mother humming along to Elvis while washing dishes with cracked hands. To the night she collapsed from exhaustion, and the radio kept playing while he held her hand, terrified. To the funeral where he sang quietly to himself because he couldn't afford flowers. Every note he sang now carried those memories, and somehow, everyone in that room could feel them too. Halfway through the song, a woman in the audience wiped tears from her face. A man clenched his jaw, trying not to cry. One of the judges pressed a hand to her chest. And Simon Cowell, known for destroying dreams with a sentence, sat frozen, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. His jaw had dropped, and for once, he didn't seem to care that the cameras caught it. Daniel's voice rose, not louder, but deeper. It cracked in just the right place, not from weakness, but from truth. It sounded like Elvis, yes, but it also sounded like every person who had ever loved and lost, every person who had ever been told they weren't enough. The song ended not with a dramatic note, but with a soft, trembling finish that felt like a confession. Silence. For 3 long seconds, no one moved. Then the room exploded. The audience leapt to their feet, applause crashing like thunder. Cheers echoed from the walls. Daniel stood there, stunned, tears streaming down his face, as if he couldn't quite believe what he'd just done. Simon stood up. That alone was enough to send the crowd into another frenzy. He walked slowly to the microphone, shook his head, and let out a breath. I've heard Elvis sung thousands of times, he said. Tonight, for the first time, I didn't hear someone trying to be Elvis. I heard someone telling the truth. His voice softened. That was extraordinary. Daniel broke down. This wasn't about winning. It wasn't about fame. It was about being seen. About having a voice after years of silence. The judges praised him not just for his talent, but for his courage. For stepping onto that stage carrying a lifetime of doubt and still choosing to sing. Backstage, Daniel admitted he almost didn't show up. He'd been rejected so many times before that he assumed this would be no different. He said he almost turned around at the door, hearing his mother's voice in his head telling him to be brave, even when his knees were shaking. By the time the episode aired, the performance had gone viral. Millions watched. Comments flooded in from people saying the song reminded them of their parents, their struggles, their own forgotten dreams. Some said it was better than Elvis. Others said it was something else entirely, something more human. Daniel didn't just advance in the competition. He changed the tone of it. From that night on, people didn't just come to sing. They came to feel. To tell their stories. And Daniel? He kept singing, not to be better than a legend, but to honor one and to prove that sometimes, the most powerful voice is the one that's been quiet for far too long. If this story touched you, if it reminded you of your own dreams or someone you love, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Because somewhere out there, another voice is waiting to be heard, and you might just be the reason their story gets told. Don't blink. Don't skip. Because what you're about to hear isn't just a song, it's the sound of a life changing in real time. Stay until the very last second, because this moment didn't just shock the judges, it healed a room full of strangers. And if stories like this move you, make sure you hit like and subscribe, because voices like this deserve to be heard by the world. The stage lights came up slowly, revealing a man standing completely still at center stage. His shoulders were tense, his hands clenched so tightly you could see the veins. The crowd barely noticed him at first. He didn't look like a star. No sparkling jacket. No confident grin. Just a man in faded jeans and a quiet fear in his eyes. Simon Cowell glanced down at his notes, already preparing for what he assumed would be another forgettable audition. The man introduced himself as Michael Reed, 41 years old, warehouse worker, father of two. When he said he would be singing Elvis, there was an audible sigh in the room. Another one, people thought. Another dreamer chasing a shadow too big to catch. Simon leaned back, arms crossed, expression unreadable. That's a bold choice, he said flatly. Why Elvis? Michael paused. His voice trembled as he answered. Because Elvis was the only thing my dad and I ever agreed on. The room quieted. Michael explained that his father was strict, distant, rarely spoke unless it was to criticize. But every Sunday morning, one Elvis record played while they sat in silence together. No fighting. No shouting. Just music. His father passed away 3 years ago, and Michael never got to say goodbye. This song, he said, was the only way he knew how. The music started softly. One guitar. Nothing else. Michael opened his mouth, and the first note came out rough, almost fragile. A few people shifted uncomfortably. But then something happened. The second line landed with weight. The third with control. His voice wasn't polished, it was weathered. It carried years of swallowing words, of working nights, of driving home exhausted while dreams sat untouched in the back of his mind. As the song continued, the audience felt it. Not just heard it, felt it. His voice didn't try to copy Elvis. It carried the spirit of him, the soul, the ache. Michael's eyes stayed closed, as if he were singing to someone only he could see. His father. Himself. Every regret that had followed him through adulthood. Simon's posture changed. He leaned forward, uncrossed his arms. His expression softened, something rare and unguarded. One judge's eyes filled with tears. The crowd was completely silent, afraid that even a breath might break the moment. Halfway through the song, Michael's voice cracked, not from nerves, but from emotion. He stopped for half a second, swallowed hard, and kept going. That pause said more than any note could. It was the sound of a man choosing not to give up, even when his heart felt too heavy to carry. The final note hung in the air, trembling, unfinished, and then gone. No instant applause. Just stunned silence. Then Simon stood up so fast his chair slid backward. Gasps rippled through the audience. He stared at Michael like he was seeing him for the first time. I don't know what just happened. Wait, don't go anywhere. What you're about to hear isn't hype, it isn't editing, and it isn't luck. It's one voice, one song, and one moment that stopped time. Watch till the end, because this story proves that miracles don't arrive loudly, sometimes they sing. And if stories like this inspire you, make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel, because your support helps these moments reach the people who need them most. The stage lights flickered on, revealing a man standing alone under a single spotlight. He looked out of place, like someone who had wandered into the wrong room by accident. His shoes were scuffed, his jacket a little too big, and his hands trembled as he held the microphone. The crowd barely reacted. Another contestant. Another dreamer. Simon Cowell glanced up briefly, already expecting disappointment. My name is Aaron Cole, the man said softly. I'm 29. I work nights at a gas station. His voice cracked when he mentioned the song choice Elvis Presley. A ripple of doubt moved through the audience. Elvis was sacred ground. People had tried, and almost all had failed. Simon leaned forward slightly, curiosity mixed with skepticism. That's a big risk, he said. Why Elvis? Aaron took a deep breath. Because Elvis was the last thing my brother ever heard. The room changed. Aaron explained that his older brother had been his protector, his guide, his hero. When their parents split, it was Elvis records that filled the silence of their empty house. When his brother got sick, it was Elvis that played quietly in the hospital room late at night. The night his brother passed away, Aaron sat alone in his car and played that same song on repeat, promising himself he'd never stop singing even if no one ever listened. The music began, slow and stripped bare. Aaron's first note was gentle, almost fragile. It didn't demand attention. It invited it. By the second line, the room leaned in. His voice had a warmth that felt familiar, like a memory you didn't know you still carried. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't polished. But it was honest, and honesty has a way of cutting deeper than perfection ever could. As he sang, Aaron stopped seeing the judges. He wasn't on a stage anymore. He was back in that car, gripping the steering wheel, tears blurring his vision, singing through the pain because silence hurt more. Every word came from a place he'd locked away for years. And somehow, every person in that room felt it like it was their own. Simon's expression shifted. The usual guarded stare melted into something raw and unfiltered. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes fixed on Aaron. One judge pressed a hand over her mouth. The audience sat frozen, afraid to interrupt the fragile magic unfolding before them. Halfway through the song, Aaron's voice grew stronger. Not louder, stronger. It was as if singing the truth was giving him permission to finally breathe. The lyrics took on new meaning, no longer about heartbreak in a song, but about love that refuses to disappear even after loss. The final note hung in the air, trembling, aching, alive. Silence followed. Not awkward silence. Sacred silence. Then Simon stood up slowly, shaking his head in disbelief. The crowd gasped as he spoke. I've heard that song my entire life, he said quietly. I thought I knew it. I didn't until just now. His voice softened. You didn't try to be Elvis. You let Elvis disappear, and what was left was you. And that was extraordinary. The audience erupted. People stood, clapped, cried. Aaron dropped his head, overwhelmed, tears spilling freely. For years, he'd sung alone. In cars. In empty rooms. In moments no one saw. And now, the world was listening. Backstage, Aaron admitted he almost didn't audition. He'd been told too many times that he wasn't special enough, that dreams were for other people. But he said he felt his brother with him that night, pushing him forward, reminding him why he promised never to stop singing. The clip spread everywhere. Millions watched. Strangers commented that it reminded them of someone they lost. Others said they'd never heard Elvis sung like that before. Some said it was better than Elvis, but most said something far more powerful. They said it felt real. Aaron didn't just earn a standing ovation. He earned belief in himself, and in the idea that pain doesn't have to silence you. Sometimes, it gives you your strongest voice. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone you love or a dream you've buried, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Because somewhere out there, someone is singing alone right now, and one day, their voice might change everything. Stop right there. Don't skip. Don't scroll. Because the next few minutes will remind you why music exists in the first place. This isn't just a performance, it's a turning point. Stay until the end, and if this story touches your heart, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this deserve to travel far beyond this screen. The curtains parted slowly, and a single spotlight fell on a man who looked like he didn't belong in the center of it. His posture was stiff, his shoulders heavy, like life itself had been sitting on them for years. The crowd gave a polite clap, nothing more. Simon Cowell barely looked up. Another contestant. Another risk-taker. Another person about to learn how unforgiving this stage could be. My name is Thomas Hale, the man said quietly. I'm 36. I'm a school bus driver. His voice was calm, but his eyes betrayed him, nervous, hopeful, exhausted. When he announced he would be singing Elvis Presley, a few audience members exchanged looks. Simon finally looked up. That's a dangerous choice, he said bluntly. Why that song? Thomas nodded slowly. Because Elvis saved my life. The room stilled. Thomas explained that years earlier, after losing his wife in a sudden accident, he spiraled into a darkness he didn't think he'd survive. He drove his bus every morning, smiling for the kids, then went home to silence. The only thing that broke it was an old Elvis record his wife used to play while cooking dinner. He said some nights, that music was the only thing that convinced him to stay. The music began soft, slow, almost fragile. Thomas opened his mouth, and the first note carried something unexpected, restraint. He wasn't trying to impress. He wasn't trying to be loud. He was careful, like someone handling a memory that could shatter if touched too hard. His voice had depth, worn smooth by grief and time. It didn't sound like Elvis at first, and then it did, but not the Elvis people copied. It was the Elvis of loneliness, of late-night radios, of quiet survival. As he sang, Thomas's hands stopped shaking. His breathing steadied. Each lyric felt lived in, like he wasn't performing the song but remembering it. The audience leaned forward without realizing it. One woman clasped her hands together. A man wiped his eyes quickly, hoping no one noticed. Simon's expression changed slowly, almost unwillingly. His critical stare softened. He leaned closer, eyes locked on Thomas, as if afraid to miss a single word. This wasn't nostalgia. This was truth. The kind you don't hear often, because most people are too afraid to show it. Halfway through the song, Thomas's voice cracked. The room froze. He paused for a split second, swallowed, and continued. That moment, raw, unplanned, hit harder than any perfect note could have. It was the sound of a man refusing to break, even when the weight of his past pressed down on his chest. The final verse arrived quietly. Thomas sang it like a promise, not to the judges, not to the audience, but to himself. The last note faded, trembling, and disappeared into the silence. No one moved. Then Simon Cowell stood up. The audience gasped as he shook his head slowly. I'm going to be honest, Simon said. I didn't expect this. I thought this would be another Elvis audition. He paused, choosing his words carefully. But what you just did, that wasn't about singing. That was about survival. And I felt every second of it. The crowd erupted. Applause thundered through the theater. Thomas covered his face, overwhelmed. For years, he'd carried his grief quietly, believing no one wanted to hear it. And now, thousands were standing because of it. Backstage, Thomas admitted he almost didn't audition. He said he was afraid that if he sang that song out loud, he'd fall apart. But he realized something on that stage, that broken doesn't mean finished. Sometimes it means honest. The performance spread fast. Millions watched. Comments poured in from people who said the song helped them through their own grief. Some said it reminded them of a loved one. Microphone collision. He sings better than Elvis? Simon Cowell's jaw drops live. Don't touch that screen. What happens next is the kind of moment people talk about years later and still get chills. Stay with this story until the end, because it's not just about a voice, it's about courage, loss, and the power of finally being heard. And if this story moves you even a little, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, because these are the moments worth spreading. The stage lights came on, and a man stood there completely still, as if the world had paused just for him. He looked older than his years, with tired eyes and a quiet sadness that couldn't be hidden. The audience gave a polite clap, but there was no excitement. Simon Cowell barely glanced up. He had seen thousands like this, people carrying hope on shaky legs, about to test it under unforgiving lights. My name is Jacob Miller, the man said softly. I'm 34. I fix elevators. A few people smiled politely. Ordinary. Forgettable. When Jacob said he would be singing Elvis Presley, a low murmur spread through the crowd. Simon finally looked up. That's a bold move, he said. Why Elvis? Jacob swallowed hard. Because Elvis was the last thing my mom and I sang together. His voice trembled, but he didn't stop. He explained that his mother had raised him alone, working long hours, singing Elvis songs while cooking dinner to keep herself awake. When she was diagnosed with cancer, Jacob became her caretaker. On her final night, she asked him to sing with her. His voice broke as he said he hadn't sung since, until now. The music started, slow and stripped back. Jacob's first note was barely above a breath. Some people shifted in their seats. But then the sound settled. It deepened. It grew roots. His voice wasn't flashy, it was honest, worn, real. It sounded like someone who had lived with silence and learned how to survive inside it. As the song unfolded, Jacob disappeared into it. His hands stopped shaking. His shoulders relaxed. Each lyric felt personal, like he was telling a story he'd never been brave enough to say out loud. The audience leaned forward. One judge's eyes filled with tears. Simon's face changed, inch by inch, as the performance pulled him in despite himself. Jacob remembered hospital hallways that smelled like disinfectant, holding his mother's hand while machines beeped softly. He remembered promising her he'd be okay, even though he didn't believe it. Every note carried that promise. Every word was a release. Halfway through the song, Jacob's voice cracked. The room froze. He paused for just a second, eyes closed, then kept going. That crack did something powerful, it made the performance human. It reminded everyone listening that strength doesn't mean never breaking. It means continuing anyway. The final verse came quietly, almost like a prayer. Jacob sang the last note gently, letting it fade instead of forcing it. When the sound disappeared, the silence that followed felt sacred. Then Simon Cowell stood up. The audience gasped as he shook his head slowly. I've heard people try to sing Elvis my entire career, Simon said. Most of them try to copy him. You didn't. He paused, clearly emotional. You made me forget the song and listen to the story. And that is incredibly rare. The crowd exploded into applause. People stood. Some cried openly. Jacob covered his face, overwhelmed. For years, he'd carried his grief quietly, believing no one wanted to hear it. And now, thousands were standing because he finally let it out. Backstage, Jacob admitted he almost didn't audition. He said he was afraid that if he sang that song, he'd fall apart completely. But standing on that stage, he felt his mother with him, reminding him why she loved music so much, because it connects us when words fail. The performance spread across the internet overnight. Millions watched. Comments poured in from people saying it reminded them of someone they lost. Some said it helped them cry for the first time in years. Others said it wasn't about being better than Elvis, it was about being brave enough to be real. Jacob didn't just leave with praise from the judges. He left lighter. Stronger. He proved that you don't need to be extraordinary to change your room. You just need the courage to tell the truth. If this story touched you, inspired you, or reminded you of someone you love, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Because somewhere out there, someone is holding onto a song the same way Jacob did, and one day, it might be the thing that saves them. Before you even think about skipping, let me tell you this: what happened next wasn't planned, rehearsed, or expected. It was raw, unscripted, and so powerful that it left an entire room frozen in disbelief. Stay with this story until the very end, and if moments like this inspire you, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, because stories like these deserve to be shared with the world. The stage lights rose, revealing a man standing alone, breathing slowly as if steadying himself against something invisible. He looked ordinary, too ordinary for a stage that had launched stars. His name was Luke Anderson. 38 years old. Construction worker. Father of one. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but respectful, like someone used to not being the loudest in the room. The audience listened politely, but no one leaned forward yet. Simon Cowell glanced down at his desk, pen in hand, prepared to take notes that likely wouldn't matter. Luke said he would be singing Elvis Presley. A soft groan rippled through the crowd. Elvis again. Simon looked up sharply. That's a very big name to step into, he said. Why choose that? Luke took a deep breath. Because Elvis was the only voice that could calm my daughter when I couldn't. The room shifted. Luke explained that his daughter was born premature, spending months in intensive care. Night after night, surrounded by machines and fear, he sang Elvis songs quietly by her bedside because that was all he knew. He sang when doctors gave him looks of doubt. He sang when his voice shook. And somehow, she slept. The music began, slow and simple. Luke's first note was soft, uncertain. But then it settled, like a hand finding balance. His voice wasn't flashy. It was warm. Steady. It sounded like someone who had sung not for applause, but for survival. As the melody carried on, something remarkable happened. The room leaned in. Not because he was loud. Because he was real. Luke's mind drifted back to hospital nights, plastic chairs, cold coffee, and prayers whispered into silence. He remembered promising his daughter that he'd always be there, even when he didn't know how. Every lyric he sang carried that promise. His voice thickened with emotion, not breaking, but bending under the weight of it. Simon stopped writing. His eyes lifted fully to the stage. The skeptical look faded, replaced by focus. One judge's lips parted slightly. Another blinked back tears. The audience sat completely still, as if moving might shatter what was happening. Halfway through the song, Luke closed his eyes. His voice grew stronger, not louder, but braver. He wasn't trying to sound like Elvis anymore. He was singing like a father who had faced losing everything and kept going anyway. The song transformed, becoming something new, familiar yet deeply personal. The final note came gently, like a hand letting go. Silence followed. Deep, heavy silence. Then Simon Cowell stood. The audience gasped before erupting into applause. Simon shook his head slowly. I'll tell you what I expected, he said. I expected another Elvis impersonation. He paused, clearly moved. What I got was a man telling the most honest story he knows how, with his voice. And that is unforgettable. Luke's knees nearly gave out. He covered his face, overwhelmed. For years, he had been strong in private, invisible in public. And now, thousands of strangers were standing because they felt his truth. Backstage, Luke said he almost didn't audition. He said life taught him to be practical, not hopeful. But his daughter, now healthy and watching from home, told him he should sing the way he used to sing for her, without fear. The performance spread across the internet within hours. Millions watched. Parents commented. Survivors commented. People said they didn't just hear a song, they felt a moment. Some said it was better than Elvis. Others said it didn't matter. It was something else entirely. Luke didn't just walk off the stage with praise. He walked off knowing that his voice mattered. That ordinary people can create extraordinary moments. That sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is stand under a spotlight and tell the truth.